First, we're going to talk about activism in India and a really big movement that has been going on for a few years. It's called the Nirbhaya movement, and yeah. So some quick facts about the movement. Um, it was started in 2012 or 20 like early 2013. In December of 2012, this girl, she was a med school student. She was, I think, like 22 or 23 years old. She was riding on a bus with her friend, and they were just alone. It was like late at night. They just finished studying. They were trying to go home, and there was a group of men on this bus, and they raped both her and her friend, and then they beat her and they killed. Beat both of them and they killed her. But her friend was not killed. She was just beaten and raped, but she was not killed. So this friend of Anindra spoke out about it, about Jyoti and their experience and how Jyoti was killed. And um, there was a lot of outrage because it was in New Delhi, which is the capital of India, and it was like in like on a public bus, and it was like in the. I mean, as being the capital city of India, it's one of the most populated cities. It's supposed to be the most like modern and like liberal cities. It's just supposed to be very like things like this. The fact that something like this could happen created a lot of outrage, and created a lot of anger, and the fact that the men were not really being held accountable created a lot of anger. So the whole Nirbhaya movement started around that. And Nirbhaya is a name the public gave to Jyoti, who was the one who was killed, in order to honor her. Um, it was really, really big in 2013. There was lots and lots of protests. There was crowds. There was a lot of like lobbying in like Congress. There's a lot of legislature that was like passed because of it. Um, and it was really big 2013. It like made the news. It was really big on social media. It made international news. I'm sure. I don't know if y'all saw it. It was 4 years ago, but I don't know if y'all saw it on like CNN and stuff like that. But it was really, really big. Um, it still continues today as a movement, but it's not as active. It's not as like big, but it's still there's still a lot of activism going on today, trying to change how the government and how people respond to things like this. And the whole point of it was to stop violence against women and to get justice and to get, um, I guess, like laws passed that can prevent things like this. So I have a few pictures coming up. These are all from the movement in 2013. As you can see, there was lots and lots of crowds. There was lots of signs being made. There was like walks and rallies. If you go to the next slide, there's even like just there's just a lot. Everyone held candles to I guess memorialize Jyoti, who was killed, to like keep her in the memory and to remember her. And yeah, so because of this movement, because of all the rallies, the government actually, and because of all the social media was a huge had a huge impact on this movement, because before information wasn't really like movements weren't like able to get this big because information wasn't passed easily between the different states of India and between the different governments because of language barriers. There's hundreds of languages in India and not everyone understands each other. So it wasn't like previous protests were not able to get this big, but because of the rise of social media and like apps like WhatsApp was really big, Facebook was really helpful. Because of that, it gained international attention and it gained the attention of the government. So because of that, the government decided to set up fast track courts in every state, just to deal with cases like this, that so that it wouldn't have to be the law, because cases in India just have a very long process of having to be like going through like the local like the police station, and then having to be reviewed by them, and then going into like a higher level and higher level until it finally gets into the courts. And it was just really difficult to even like, especially for the victim, or the survivor, or anyone who is like in or representing them. It was really difficult for them to continue the process because of their own like it was very expensive to do the continue that process and stuff like that, and so a lot of times justice was not found. So the government decided to create fast track courts just to deal with cases like this, so that they could go into the courts as quickly as possible. And also, they decided to change a lot of the management of these cases. Survivors and victims of their relatives can now submit complaints online instead of having to go to a local police station and talk to a person. A lot of times, women, especially in these cases, were laughed at or were told that they were responsible. So they did not want to report cases, or if they did, they were literally laughed at by policemen, and so it was very traumatizing. So now, if they were afraid of having to deal with someone in person, they could now submit complaints online and be and the cases would be processed, I guess, objectively, instead of someone looking at them personally. It would be processed without their personality getting into it or whatever. People who now help the victims in these times, if they see someone being getting beaten or getting raped or stuff like that, but people who help them can no longer get in trouble. Even if they use violence, they cannot get in trouble, not serious trouble like they could have in the past. And also there's a whole new training thing that was put in place for police, and also more women were being hired into the police force to deal with these issues, because men, just because of the patriarchal system, were not able to deal with this sensitively, or they were not trained to. But now there's a whole new training system in place to train both men and women in the police force into dealing with these kinds of cases properly. And they also created the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2013. That was really, it was because of this case that they created this amendment to deal with cases like this. And also they started women's only bus services and women's only coaches on trains, so that they, in case a woman felt like they needed that, they could have that option. And also there was a fund that was started to help women who have been in these situations. So there was a lot of changes that took place in India, but obviously the problem is far, far from being over. There's still a lot of cases, especially in rural areas, of people, of women and even men, being raped, being beaten. There's a lot of cases of um, just violence for no reason, and survivors don't feel safe speaking out. So there's a lot of changes that can happen. All the changes that I said were mostly in big cities and in really populated areas, but in really in smaller cities, or places that are far away from the main justice system, or the main court system, it's really hard to get any sort of recognition or any sort of justice. So yeah, there's a lot of change that still needs to happen, but like I said, the Nirbhaya movement is still active today. And yeah, so these are some more pictures from the time. As you can see, there was millions of people came out. India is the second most populated country in the world, so if you can just think of all the women in India, just them coming out, and then also, as you can see, there are lots of men who came out to support as well. There's a huge movement. I think the next picture really shows how many people came out. This was just in one small city. This wasn't even in Delhi. Yeah, it was a huge turnout, which this is why it really gained attention